Here we have the DBQ for 2020 slideshow. This is probably the last recording of this sort that I'm going to do for the year. Maybe a pep talk prior to the exam itself, but that's probably about it. Everything else will either be a video conference or through Remind / a Canvas announcement. Now, this is a retooling of the DBQ slideshow that we already did, but this one is going to be me going over each of the points because, as you know, hopefully, the DBQ has been very heavily modified. So let's dive in. All right. The exam format. All those times that I told you about the exam format, well, I was wrong apparently. It's all one section now, a single DBQ, 10 points for everything. Fairly obviously, if you write a 10-point DBQ, it can probably be safely assumed you'll get a 5. They have not released anything like a grading scale. I don't think they're going to normalize it. So the theory is if your whole class writes a 10-point DBQ, all of you get 5s. No one knows how this works. I would not go in thinking, oh, it's going to be 0 to 2 points, well, that's a 1, and 3 to 4, that's a 2, and 4 to 5 is a 3, so that's what I have to aim for. We don't know that, and everybody's got access to the internet, so you are going to have to focus on getting as many points as possible, just like you would if it were a normal exam. 5 documents, unless you have some form of time extension. You will be expected to do it all in 45 minutes. Please keep that in mind. All right. One option, as is always the case with the DBQ, it has to come from units 1 through 6. We do not know if it will be in a single units or time period. We do not know if it will be cross time period. We don't know anything about the formatting of this. And it will still use one of the historical reasoning skills, comparison, causation, or continuity and change over time. Okay, so as for the points, this year and this year only, the DBQ is a 10-point object. The context and thesis points should be familiar to you, hopefully. Evidence is 0 to 5 points. There's a lot more evidence points this year than normal, and there's one more analysis and reasoning point. So please keep that in mind as you prepare for the document-based question. All right, so the points. This is, of course, going to be the lion's share of this video. Context is the same as it ever was. You need to bring up how we got here. If it's the Columbian Exchange and that's your document, you need to talk about Europe was a backwater beforehand, but now we're at the Columbian Exchange. Or if it's same prompt, you could talk about the existing Aztec and Inca empires, and all that changed when the Columbian Exchange began. Bo Simpson and I know, did the Star Wars yellow text crawl as the context. It tells you the background. Your context should not address the actual meat of the essay. Any facts that are relevant to the time period that you are talking about and the unit that you are working with, those go into the body. Again, you can get context without reading any of the documents. You can get context and know nothing about the actual topic of the essay. Context is how much you know about beforehand or what was running concurrently. It's highly unlikely that this will happen, but if you got like a Protestant Reformation question, you could talk about exploration going on at the same time. Let's move on. Okay, the thesis, the core of the argument. I stole this slide directly from my thesis slideshow. The thesis is the roadmap for your paper. It is what you are going to be saying. It is what your paper should flow through. Everything should come back to the thesis. To do well on the exam, you have to have a thesis. So many of the coming points are tied to an argument. make sure that your thesis is an argument. Somebody should look at your thesis. Somebody should be able to look at your thesis and go, I disagree. Even if it takes a crazy person to disagree, they should be able to do so. You have the College Board description of a thesis on the right-hand side of the screen if you'd like to pause that and look at it in teeny-weeny eye straino vision. And also, you have a whole thesis slideshow posted onto Canvas for your convenience. The documents have to run concurrently with your thesis. They are the two most important things. Pretty much the whole remainder of the DBQ points rely upon the 5 documents that you will be given at the start of the DBQ. We have no idea what these document sets are going to look like. We assume a document will be a visual source and that the other 4 will be written because that would be how it is in a normal year, but we do not know that. Reading the documents in a rapid period of time is critical to success on this exam this year. You have to get through them quickly. You have to read them both well and also thoroughly. That is a big deal, you guys. All right. Evidence point number 1 uses the content of at least 2 documents to address the prompt. Everybody should get evidence point number 1. You talk about the content of 2 of the documents, relating them back to the prompt. So long as you reference 2 documents properly in the essay, you will have gotten the point. You do not have to even reference them in regards to your arguments. It is very easy to get evidence point number 1. Please, please, please don't skimp on that. Evidence 2 is an intermediate point. It did not exist in the original format. Evidence point number 2 requires you to use 2 documents to support your thesis. That's where you have the therefore, the this shows, the thus demonstrating sentence. You tie documents 1 and 2 to your thesis. Or you tie documents 3 and 4, or document 1 and 5. I don't care which documents they are. You do it with 2 of them. You tie them to the thesis. You get the points. Okay. That simple. Evidence point numero 3 requires you to accurately describe content from 4 of the documents and use the content to support an argument in response to the prompt. In this case, this is where those happy, hip, hippo, there's so many acronyms for it, aspects come into play. You have to prove I read and understood these documents and I'm using them to support an argument. I know there's some confusion over how to cite documents. That's at the end of this presentation. We're gonna address that. Moving on. Happy, what you're going to do for both this and for the analysis points is breaking down the documents by finding and referencing one of those things. Historical context, audience, point of view, and purpose, and then saying why that impacts the document or why that document is relevant to your thesis. You don't have to do all 4 of those things for the point to happen. If you can only find how the document's audience impacts what it says and why it says that, great, move on. If it's a factory owner talking to his employees about how great the Industrial Revolution has been for them, that's what that's where you go, well, the audience is a bunch of workers, so the guy's going to be describing how great their jobs are. Why would he say that to this audience? There you go. Or how does his point of view skew what he's saying? There you go. You do not have to go into like super supreme amounts of depth. You just have to prove you know one of those 4 things, how it impacts the document's contents, and why that supports your argument. That's all you got to do. There are now 2 outside evidence points. These are the last 2 evidence points, evidence 4 and evidence 5. taking a fact or example which does not appear in any of the documents, but which furthers your argument. Please keep in mind, outside of all of the documents is what I mean by that. If you include something that appears in document 5 and you're like, but I didn't use document 5, doesn't matter. That is still not outside evidence. This is one of those situations where I approach this with a lot of trepidation simply because you're going to have access to the internet during the test this year. College Board knows that. So make sure that your outside evidence isn't just the first Google search result, because that will get flagged very, very quickly by the plagiarism bots. Just make sure that you're actually doing a deep dive. College Board has historically left a gap in the information within documents, like they might be giving you an essay about the Mongol Empire and not have anything about the atrocities they committed. That's where you yank that in and go, wait a darn minute, look at all these people they murdered. Or a document about the Columbian Exchange that doesn't include any of the diseases. It talks about the murder of the natives and the taking of their land, but oh, hey, we didn't mention disease. That's where you pull that in. The gaps should be wider this year because this is evidence 4 and 5, so you need 2 pieces of outside evidence. According to the rubric they gave us, a single fact or example will suffice to get you one of these points, and then a second one will get you the second point. Here is the other thing I want you to know. Do not say that this is your outside evidence point. Don't say, not appearing in any of the documents, here's some information. No, wrong, stop. You reference the historical event, let the historical event speak for itself, please. All right. Now we're into the analysis points. Analysis 1 and 2. One of the documents, you have to explain how or why one of the happy aspects is relevant to the prompt. Do it a second time for analysis number 2. You do that for 2 documents, you got 2 more points. If you do that third evidence point, which you should, like you try to do happy for 4 out of the 5 documents or for all 5 of the documents, if you even get half of them right, you've earned these 2 points. You might botch it and not get evidence 3, but do it right for these 2, and you've already got these 2 points and the first 2 evidence points just by getting that halfway right. That's a big deal. That means you've already got 4 out of the 10 points. If you had a thesis, now you're 5 out of 10. You wrote contextualization, you're at 6 out of 10. That's awesome. And that's before you factor in the 2 outside evidence points. You can write an 8-point essay by successfully analyzing 2 of the 5 documents. You guys got this. And then analysis 3, the infamous unicorn point. Wording is exactly the same. Still shows complex understanding. It's where you can peg in your however paragraph. It's where you use different points of view to make connections across time periods. Don't lose sleep over this. Like I've said before, if you write an 8-point DBQ or a 9-point DBQ and you just don't get that unicorn point, you're still looking at a 5 on the exam almost certainly. The sheer number of kids who have done nothing over their time off is going to be a boost to you, provided that you're not one of them, wink. The sheer number of kids who haven't done anything, who are freshmen, who are freaking out because they're distance learning, any number of things. If you write an 8-point DBQ, even if you only get a 4, there are no universities that I know of that mandate that you get a 5 on the AP World exam, and I still think an 8-point DBQ is going to net you a 5 this year. A 9-pointer definitely will, and obviously if you get analysis 3, congratulations on your 5, but this is not some insurmountable monster of an essay, especially since the 5 documents, if you can read quickly, you're probably going to like your score. All right, so a few tips and tricks to get through this. As you read the documents, you might want to be formulating your thesis and such in your head as you go through them. Those can be your topics for the various paragraphs. You could even group them into, hey, here's 2 documents that say the Mongols were great, and here's 3 documents that say they were the spawn of Satan, who is the devil. You can do any number of things with that. Look for the spice tea / septic categories in the documents. That should hopefully help you narrow things down. It won't be as easy with 5 documents instead of 7, but you might still be able to go, okay, I can write this paragraph about economics and this paragraph about politics. It still might help you out. Time is of the essence. That 45-minute window is probably the thing that has me the most nervous. Do not fixate on this exam being pretty. Save that for your English classes. Tell me the facts. You wrote 2 body paragraphs. Oh no, I only wrote 2 body paragraphs. That's fine. Lastly, on this slide, explain. Do not just describe the documents. Your readers know what the documents say. Explain why what they say matters. Last little bit when referencing documents. It is not, this is document 1. No, it isn't. It's Columbus's diary. In document 2, no, in the illustration from the Aztec Temple of the Sun. That is what you do. After you reference the document in a sentence, you can then reference the document in parentheses at the end. So, Columbus's diary illustrates blah, 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 parentheses, document 1, totally fine. It's not mandatory, but it does let you keep track of the documents which you have used versus ones you haven't used. I think it's a good idea. And if you have any questions on the DBQ after you watch this or you go over the slideshow, a couple of students have already sent me remind messages. You can email me. You've got options. So don't be afraid to reach out and talk because the DBQ is literally the only thing on the test. I would much rather you know it than just wing it because you like what you got on your A-Push exam or Human Geo exam last year. All right, guys, thank you for listening. See you later.